when it comes to your perception or your definition of sexual empowerment, what does that mean?
That's a great question. So I myself have thought about this a lot too, because I mean, yes, you can call me intimacy coach, sex coach, but I prefer sexual empowerment. Um, because I feel like in order for us to be able to fully own our sexuality, we need to feel empowered to do so. So, how do we get to a place of empowerment? I've broken it down to two different concepts, right? The first one is knowledge. You become a sexually empowered person when you have knowledge of sexual anatomy, knowledge of self, what you like and what you don't like, knowledge of your partners, what they like, what they don't like, right? So you're accumulating knowledge by understanding yourself and through the self-exploration journey, right? And then the second piece is courage. So once you have the knowledge, then you need the courage to act upon the things that you know, right? So for example, if I know I like X, Y, and Z, I know my partner likes X, Y, and Z. How do I muster up the courage to go out and do those things and feel good about them and enjoy the pleasure that my body is experiencing?
Does that the courage piece, that's something that I spoke to a few other people about that, and that seems to be like something that's difficult for some people because they still associate like shame and
Mhm.
guilt with intimacy. How can someone then obtain the courage to have those types of conversations where maybe there's like a fear of rejection, there's a fear of shame, there's a fear of guilt?
Yeah. Well, of course, I'm going to say first and foremost, like if you have the ability to, definitely hire a coach, hire a therapist, because if you need that extra guidance, having a coach or a therapist there to hold your hand throughout that entire process can be very, very, very supportive, right? But ultimately, I would say that feeling that you feel, that shame, that guilt, that fear, right? In order to be able to get through it, to get to a place of confidence and empowerment, you need to have the courage. You can't have courage if you're not afraid, right? So, what that means is that those icky feelings, we get to learn how to embrace them. Because in order to become confident, you need to do the uncomfortable thing a million times until it becomes comfortable. And once it becomes comfortable, you gain confidence. And once you gain confidence, you become an empowered person. Never let the fear, never let the shame, never let the guilt hold you back. Okay, it's there. Hi fear, hi guilt, hi shame. How you doing? Let me hold your hand and we're going to go through this together. And eventually they'll go away. But they can't go away until you just accept that they're going to be there for a little bit.
Yeah, that was like the conversation piece for me was tough because I looked at it sometimes, this is like way back in the day, as is this like a sign of arrogance? Just because if I go to like my partner and say, I like this, I like that, this is what I prefer, this is what maybe I don't prefer. My feeling at that time was okay, if I say these things, what if it offends her? What if
Mm.
it makes you feel inadequate? Right? It's not like I'm saying that I want a girl with big tits and big ass. Like, no, I'm not. I'm not saying that, right? What I'm saying is that, hey, is it okay if we try this? Is it okay, try that? Because I've been in a position where someone has said, okay, Train, is it okay if we try this? And even though I was hesitant in the beginning, we had the conversation. I was like, okay, you know what? This is something you're going to enjoy, and I get to be a part of that,
Mhm.
right? And that feels good. Is that like a missing piece where sometimes it can come across as selfish in a way, but maybe it should be looked at, you get to participate in something your partner is going to enjoy?
Yeah, that's a great question. So 2 points I want to make to that. First of all, you are not responsible for your partner's pleasure. I am not responsible for my partner's pleasure. We are all responsible for our own pleasure. So when I say that is I'm responsible to advocate for myself. This is what I like. This is what I don't like. This is what feels good. This is what I find curious, right? The reason why I say that is because a lot of us have sex and we're so worried about the other person. Do they like it? Do they not like it? What's going on in their heads, right? That we forget about ourselves and then we don't enjoy sex altogether. So my only responsibility in sex is my pleasure. And when it comes to partnership, Our added responsibility is to listen attentively, to respect boundaries, right? And to do what is requested if we feel comfortable to do so to the best of our ability. Okay, so that's one piece. The second part of that is understanding that intimacy is a co-creation of an experience, right? It's the same thing like if I were to tell you, like, what do you want to do today? And you say, "Ooh, I would really like to go to the movies." And I look at you and I say, "Ooh, movies? They sound okay. Can we maybe go have dinner before the movies?" Yeah, dinner before the movie sounds good. And then maybe after the movie, we can go for a walk. I don't really feel like going for a walk after the movie. Okay, I understand. So why don't we just do dinner and a movie and then we can like go home? Yeah, that sounds good. So there's a discussion, right? That co-creation. And that piece is really important. So expressing your needs and your wants and your, all of that is not selfish. In fact, if two people are coming together and doing that together, now you're co-creating an experience that both of you will enjoy. So that negotiation piece, that conversation, communication, all of that is so important.
The way you've put it sounds so much better than anyone I've ever heard when it comes to like my friends, right? Because they're like, I really want to do this. And they'll like list it, right? But you mentioned like the way you talked about it's co-creation. It's this. I'm responsible for what I like. You're responsible for what you like. We come together and then co-create. Where and this is probably where so many people are going to say this like toxic like men talk, right? Where it's like, I want to do it this way, meaning that I'm giving the instructions, and sometimes the other person is viewed as, even though men and women, like there's some people that are givers and receivers and you alternate. Some people's like, I'm going to be a giver 100% of the time. So you have to receive everything that I say in every which way. And I did a test with some of my male acquaintances and I asked them, how do you enjoy having sex without getting too graphic, right? They mentioned it. I was like, if it was reverse and you were a woman and you were receiving that type of activity, would you like it? They're like, oh no, I would hate that. Maybe you should then reconsider your what you're doing in the bedroom, because maybe she's going along with it just to go along with it, and maybe she may feel a certain type of way if you're not communicating that. Do you see a lack of communication impacting negatively, very negatively, the whole scenario of the intimacy and the sexual experience?
Yeah, 100%. And, I just want to be made, I want to make something very clear. I don't like to generalize people by gender, right? Like, yeah, I get it. Men are socialized a certain way, women are socialized a certain way, like that exists. But I wouldn't generalize a person based on their gender or their race or their eth or like their socioeconomic status, right? Ultimately, at the end of the day, it's how can I create a safe dynamic with the people I engage with sexually where they feel open enough to say, I'm not into that. I want to do this. Can we talk about it a little bit more? Right? Now, this is where we have also again, the responsibility to communicate our needs, but also hold space, understand our partners and respect their boundaries, right? And that conversation can look a little bit like, I really like to do this. How do you feel about it? If your partner says, I don't know, okay, how can I support you in figuring that out? Now, it's important to understand that piece because you're right. There are a lot of people that just go with what their partner says because they themselves don't know themselves sexually, right? So if one person knows what they like more than the other, then I would invite that other person that knows more of what they enjoy to really invite their partner to explore themselves a little bit more, right? To ask them, like, how can I support you in figuring out if this is something, right? And even saying, if you don't feel comfortable, let me know, and I'm okay with not doing this again, right? Or is there something I can do to make this experience more comfortable for you? So I'll give you an example because there's a lot of nuances, right, in sexual activity. So I had a client, and her boyfriend, they've been together for like 9 years. And so, monogamous 9 years, they only have sex with each other. And one of the biggest, I guess, wedges between them was that he really likes doggy style or like behind positions, right? And she's like, I don't like them. So I said, okay, why don't you like them? Just out of curiosity. And she goes, I feel like they're really degrading. I feel like that position is degrading and dehumanizing. And I said, okay, is there any way that you can make that position feel more loving, right? And she took a moment and she paused and said, I think if he was maybe extra affectionate, maybe if he said really sweet things in my ear, maybe if he grabbed my waist and kissed my neck, I was like, okay. I was like, how would that feel? She's like, I think I would be interested in doing it like that. I said, okay. What if you did it in front of a mirror so he can actually see you as you're doing that? She's like, oh, yeah, that would be a great idea. So they tried it and they had an amazing time, right? Again, the co-creation, right? He wanted this specific thing. We talked about what could support her in enjoying it. They both ended up enjoying it, right? So yes, that communication is so important. And yeah, a lot of couples lack that for many, many, many reasons. But communication is my number two sex tip. Very, very important.
I've heard some of my female friends tell me that they view doggy style as degrading for the various reasons. Like some mentioned that they had a bad experience. Some mentioned the media that they've seen and some of the videos that they've watched. Like we're talking about like porn and things like that. It has what's the word I'm looking for? It has tainted their view of it, right? But here is a good point. Just because you may have observed something or you may feel a certain way, you can still own it and make it yours, right? Such as the mirror, such as being more affectionate. What do you think are some of the obstacles that couples face then when it comes to the communication piece and or the co-creation of the moment?
Oh God, it's a lot. It's a lot. It's a long
We
list. A lot of possible obstacles. Okay, so let's just start naming them. Childhood, right? Like if you grew up in a home where you were not taught how to express your feelings, right? You might be a people pleaser. You might have a hard time telling someone, hey, don't do this, don't do that. I like this, I don't like that, right? Not feeling safe in the dynamic, right? So if you're in a relationship where maybe, things have happened in the partnership that have created kind of an emotionally unsafe space to really express yourself fully, right? But let's just say those two pieces are like not present. Let's say someone had a great childhood, no trauma, and let's just say someone has, a couple has an amazing relationship, they get along well and all the things, and they're still having that. It really comes down to your own sexual exploration, right? And then again, the knowledge and the courage, then developing that courage to be able to express yourself. A lot of people also get scared with like hurting their partner's feelings, right? They're like, oh, I don't want to say this, I don't want to hurt their feelings. But if you kind of take yourself out of it and you're not saying, you suck at this, do this better, instead you're saying, hey, again, let's create this experience where we can both enjoy it. What do you like? What do I like? Right? Let's figure this out. Now, what you're doing is you're becoming a team creating something that you really enjoy versus finger blaming or telling your partner they're not good enough, right? It's how you say it that really matters. And which brings me to another point. A lot of people just don't have the communication skills. How do you learn to talk about these things, right? And that, again, communication is a skill, right? It's a skill that takes practice, a lot of fucking practice, and you will make many mistakes as you practice it, but the more you practice it, the better you become at it, right? So those are just some obstacles.
So when it comes to having these types of conversations, like I think for the most part, people can communicate with their friends at work, but intimacy and sex, this is a whole different way to communicate. Like if I were to compare the way I communicate with my partner about these things and the way I communicate at work, two different worlds. Right?
Mhm.
You're very professional, like, yeah, you know what? Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. And all this other stuff, right? You may say that in a bedroom, depending on if you're into like role plays and things like that. But how does someone then take the steps necessary to say, Jocelyn, I want to learn to communicate what I want, but it's not necessarily only about hurting my partner's feelings. It's what if I say what I like and they tell me no?
Amazing. Yeah. So the first piece is a lot of people don't have, again, the language, right? So something that I do with my clients, I created a workbook called Knowing Me, Knowing You that literally takes somebody from like through an entire sexual experience, from time of day all the way to aftercare, right? So communication, foreplay, initiation of intimacy, motion in the ocean. And this really gives them the tools to be able to say, I like this, I don't like this, I enjoy this, I don't enjoy that, right? So that is one tool that I give my clients to kind of help them understand how to say the things that are hard to say, right? Now, whenever you say the things that are hard to say and your partner says no, right? That is an invitation for a conversation. And a lot of people, okay, sorry, 2 points. That is an invitation for a conversation, right? So what that means is checking in. Does your no mean forever? Is this just something you'll never be interested in? Or are you open to discussing this a little bit more and seeing if maybe with more education, maybe with more understanding, you might be interested in this particular act, right? So that's one point. And then the second point is that a lot of people get in relationships and they talk about everything else, family, career, finances, da 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 da. But they don't talk about sex. So then they end up with someone for 10 years that they're sexually incompatible with, which is why I always say that talk about sex early on in the relationship. If I got a really big kink that turns me on so much and you don't like it, and I want to be a monogamous person, like that's going to be a problem at one point, right? So that sexual compatibility is really important. Okay. So I'm going to give you an example of a couple that I worked with that I'm still like so impressed with their development. It's just been amazing. So the husband had an affair and they were on the brink of divorce. They said, we don't know, like we don't know if we're going to survive this, blah, 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 blah. The wife loved him so much and said, I want to figure this out. Like, this is our last chance. Like, let's see if we can salvage this relationship. So he said a lot of hard truths. He said, I'm curious about other women. I have a lot of fantasies about other women. And I don't really want to die without having these experiences. They'd been together for 15 years. And she was so, so courageous. She sat through all of it, and there were so many tears and so many hard moments, right? But I don't push my clients. I always check in. Is this a hard no for you? Right? And it wasn't for her. She said, I'm open to hearing more about this. I'm open to exploring possibilities. And what we discovered and what came out through coaching is that she actually was bi-curious. She was curious about being with women. And so through a lot of hard conversations and a lot of co-creating, they discovered that they were interested in maybe playing with other women together as a couple. And now they're like they're regulars at their local swingers club. And they like message me all the time, like, oh my God, we hooked up with this couple and it was so much fun. Like they're having a blast, right? Because of all of these hard conversations. Now, if she had said, this is a hard no for me, right? He obviously would have needed to respect that, and that probably would have been the end of their relationship. But she was genuinely open to just doing this. And something I told her very clearly, I said, if you're doing this just for him, that is not going to end well. So if you embark on this journey with him, it needs to be for you, right? And we made that very, very clear. And she 100% does it for her now. And I'm just so proud of them.
When it comes to situations like that, because it's always interests me, how does someone identify for themselves if it's a soft no, hard no, and if they're doing the transition for themselves or they're doing it for the other person?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's a lot of self check-ins, a lot of asking yourself, like, am I interested in this? Is this something I could do? And also, a lot of people tend to say no because they don't have education. They don't have information, right? So we'll take this couple, for example. They thought swinger clubs were just like a free-for-all. She had this idea, or they had this idea in their head that like, oh, they're just going to show up and people are going to be having sex everywhere and everyone's going to be like wild, you know? And I actually told them, I was like, no, 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 you don't understand. Swingers are amazing at respecting boundaries. There's lots of communication that happens. Everyone is very kind. And once, you know, they started realizing like, really? And they started learning more and more about it, then they're like, huh, okay, actually, yeah, we might be interested in this, right? We might actually be down to try it. So I think the first step in knowing is getting all of the education that you need to get to understand a specific act, whatever it may be, swinging, pegging, threesomes, using a vibrator, right? Whatever. Get all the education, right? Look on Google, hire a sex coach, do everything you have to do to fully educate yourself. Once you're fully educated, then you can make an educated decision. You know what? I got all the knowledge and the information. I'm still not into it. It's not for me, right? Or, oh, now that I've learned a little bit about it, I could be curious about talking about this with you. Let's figure out how we can make this work, right? So I would definitely say that constant check-ins and obtaining all the knowledge and education you can on that specific sexual act.
And that's what, and I'm glad you answered it that way because that's something that I learned through talking to people like you and so many um sexual empowerment coaches as sex coaches. And now that I think about it, I maybe know more than I thought I did when it comes to people in this area. But it's always interests me because growing up, I grew up probably like a lot of people who parents were immigrants, where it's like a very like Christian household, and it's very like you don't do these, yeah, you don't do this, you don't do that. If you're going to do it, close the drapes, lock the door. It's very like hidden and secret. And then as you get older and you start to explore, you begin to ask questions, and sometimes they don't necessarily want to answer those questions because maybe they don't know, to your point, lack of education, or they just don't want you to go down that path. But speaking to the sex coaches, they, and you've shared this, they say the number one thing is educate yourself because you don't know what you like until you figure it out. And the worst thing you want to do is just be out there and then something happens, and then that could put you in a difficult situation, your relationship, and so on. So when it comes to swingers, sex education, and just a conversation, what myths do you want to debunk about the whole experience and why?
Okay, that's the first thing I just said is that it's a sex free-for-all. It's not. It's not a sex free-for-all. That's the biggest myth I would want to debunk when it comes to swinging, right? Or open lifestyle. Swingers, polyamorous people are among the most respectful, kind, and non-judgmental people I've ever experienced in my life. Every single person that goes into that space has boundaries. Every single person that goes into that space has preferences, right? And, you know, obviously there's a few bad apples, but for the most part, people are very kind and respectful and understanding. So if you walk in there and you say, my partner and I are not playing with anyone, we're just going to watch, people, oh, okay, cool, right? Or we're only down for XYZ. Oh, okay, sounds good, right? And then a lot of these swinger places also have a lot of really strict rules. Like if you do cross a boundary, like security will get you out of there quick, right? So I would say that's one myth. Another myth that I would like to debunk is that you can be a swinger and not communicate with your partner. No, 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 no. You don't understand. If you're going to be a swinger, if you're going to be polyamorous or open, you are going to need to over communicate. What is okay? What's not okay? What's the safe word? Who do you want to hook up with? How do we want to hook up with them? Where do we want to hook up with them? If you feel uncomfortable, what do we do? What do we not do? What do we everything over communicate. Some people think it's just like, oh, it's Saturday night. You want to go to a swingers club? Sure, let's go. And like, no, it's not like that. You need to prepare and you need to plan and you need to understand what my boundaries are to the T, right? So something as simple as you can make out with my husband, but you cannot kiss his neck, right? Very like nuanced, but it makes a big difference if you're crossing someone's boundaries, right? So understanding what you're comfortable with and what you're not comfortable with, you know? One of the things I told that particular couple is she was so cute because I told them I was like red is like no, I don't like this. We like, let's go pause and like talk about it. And green is, I really am enjoying this, right? And she goes, well, what if it's a yellow? And I said, mm-mm. In a swingers club, a yellow is a red. I'm like, you need to either be a fuck yes or it's a fuck no, right? Because that's the only way that you can have a good time. If not, then your nervous system's going to be shot. You're going to go into flight, fight, or freeze, and you're not going to have fun, right? Another myth that I would like to debunk is that swingers and polyamorous and lifestyle people are dirty. They're not. A lot of people are very strict with the way that they have sex, make sure that they use condoms, they get tested very regularly, right? You don't want to make assumptions. You always make sure that you want to ask, like, when was the last time you got tested? Do you mind if we wear a condom, right? Just to be safe. But again, among the safest people to engage with. So those are just a few myths.
It seems like some people, for some reason, to your first point, is like a free for all. They probably think in their mind people just show up to a building and it is sex everywhere, the ceiling, the walls, the floor, right? But
Yeah.
I had close friends that was in the industry. Like I knew the family, I knew the husband, I knew the wife pretty well, and they had children, and they were part of this lifestyle. And to your point, they over communicated. It was an idea from the woman, and then they had a conversation with the man, and over time, they decided it was what they wanted to do. And when they used to tell me, it was such a relief because I was like in the middle of two worlds. I was hearing, oh, they're dirty, to your point, they're this and that. And now I'm getting first hand information like it's like this, it's like that. You know, some nights we just go there, we just observe. Other nights we
Yeah.
participate, right? And yeah, and it's funny that I wonder because it's not like you can watch it on TV. Right? So sometimes I wonder where do some people get this view of it? Like where do you think people get their view of swingers that they think it's this when it's actually this?
Because it's okay. So to your point, what you were saying before about being raised in a Christian household, right? In mainstream society, we are not taught how to have effective, clear conversations around sex. It's very extreme. You're either having sex with your husband or wife, right? And you're married, or you're fucking the world, right? There's no concept of like, let's talk about boundaries. Let's talk about what we enjoy. Let's figure this out and like, let's mutually respect each other, right? The world sees it as black or white. You know, there's no room for that gray of like understanding, like, okay, like how can you open your relationship up in a way that is centered around communication, integrity, and honesty, right? A lot of people think that, oh, if you're having sex with someone else, it's because you're cheating. Why? Because we're not taught how to have these effective conversations. We're not taught how to say the hard things. And that's really what creates intimacy, right? That is like the basis of intimacy.
You mentioned something earlier on when it came to aftercare.
Mhm.
And I've heard about this quite a bit, and I work with women on my end, and they highlight how important it is because some of them in their previous relationships, not their current ones, they felt there was like a lack of aftercare. So I want to ask you, how important is aftercare to intimacy?
I mean, that depends on everybody. Everybody is different, right? So I think, and that goes back to like checking in with yourself, right? Some people after sex, they just want to roll to the side and go to bed. Some people after sex, they want to go straight to the shower, take a shower, and then go to sleep. Some people after sex, they need to cuddle, they need to be kissed, they need to be loved, they need to be held, right? Some people want to have a cigarette after sex. Some people want to have ice cream, right? Aftercare means different things to different people. So I would say the importance of it depends on everybody, and they just have to figure out what it is that they need after intimacy to feel close and connected.
Yeah, and that's where the gap was in the woman that mentioned that they didn't communicate, they assumed.
Mhm.
And I told them, and I'll get your opinion on this, the worst thing you can do is assume when it comes to intimacy. You don't know if the person likes that. You don't know if they enjoy it. And if aftercare, as an example, is important to the other person, they could have been with five other relationships before you where the person, it wasn't important to them. So they just got used to that. What would be your thoughts on us assuming things when it comes to intimacy?
Don't do it. Never do it. Never assume. Don't ever assume anything ever in or outside of intimacy.
Easy answer. Don't ever assume. Ask. Don't be afraid. Get the courage, as you mentioned, right? Ask, ask, and ask. So as we close, Jocelyn, I'm going to give you three wishes, and you can wish for anything that you want when it comes to this question. What do you want people to know? What do you wish people knew more about when it comes to sexual empowerment, and why?
Okay. My first wish is that the number one thing that is going to make your sex and intimate life the most fulfilling and satisfying ever is your relentless authenticity. The more true you are to yourself, the more you stand in your integrity, the better things will be for you. Okay. The second wish I have is for people to understand that things will be a little uncomfortable before they get comfortable. So for people to embrace the discomfort of growth. It's going to be awkward to have these conversations. It's going to be uncomfortable to ask for what you want. Embrace it because the more you do it, the more you'll get used to it and the more those feelings will go away, right? And the last one, I would say my last wish is for everyone to go on a journey where they love their bodies and love their sexual expression, whatever that looks like. Hire a coach, hire a therapist, read books, masturbate, right? Whatever it takes. But to really gift yourself in this lifetime the opportunity of knowing what it feels like to enjoy sex. Because sex is such a beautiful gift that our bodies have given us. So give that to yourself, please.